Hello, everyone. Welcome to the second installation of the Chat It Up podcast. I'm your host, Peter Leva, once again broadcasting from broadcasting, whatever. I'm not that. I ain't that sophisticated. From El Paso, Texas, with Border Bros, and I'd like to introduce my current guest. Her DeviantArt name is GeorgieDeeArt. She does photography, painting, and various other traditional forms of art. So. How should I refer to you?
Georgie, call me Georgie.
Alrighty, so Georgie, how are you today?
I am doing pretty well, thank you.
Alrighty, or should I say, in my terms, you're tomorrow, 16 hours ahead of me.
Yeah, I'm in the future.
Yeah, all the way from Australia. Wow. So for my American audiences, I don't know. Tell the audience a little bit about yourself. You know, where you lived, what school was like. You know, your art career, the works.
Sure.
So
Yes.
give us a song and dance.
So I'm from the state of Queensland. It's one of the biggest states in Australia, and our states are huge compared to yours.
Yes.
I've brought up on the coast. I wasn't really brought up anywhere near the city or anything like that, and I have had influence from the country because my family possessed a farm, so I'm sort of like in the between. That's sort of my upbringing. I went to a public school in what you call elementary, we call it primary here. But I went to two, yeah, we call it primary here. I went to a public school for that, but I went to two private schools. For high school, I went to an Anglican and then I went to Roman Catholic, and then I went straight to university because I was able to have a loan to defer fees, and I went and did. I studied visual art as my major, and then also did business management because I've just started a second degree postgraduate studies for secondary education. I need two teaching areas. So I've got business as well as art, but I do art mainly at the moment. I'm still living with family, so art's not as productive as it could be because I have limited space, but that's why I'm involved with a lot of photography and all that. I don't have a job, but I volunteer part-time at one of the local galleries here. I work on installs here. I'm very arts-minded at the moment and also education-minded.
Well, from following your DeviantArt page, yes, I can say that you've got quite the photographic eye.
Yeah, I started photography when I was probably about 13, 14, and then I got a better camera. Not an amazing camera, but a better camera at the end of high school, and it's just been a hobby from there on.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So you've also studied business and education.
Yeah, so I didn't do a full business. I only did 6 courses in it, but mainly management courses, and I've just started my education once, which is postgraduate, and I'm freaking out about it.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. Ever since I was introduced to the world of small business, I realized I wanted nothing to do with corporate America or white collar jobs. So my mom seems to think and seems to press on the idea of me doing some sort of postgraduate degree, and I'm like, I want to tell her no because I'm seeking self-employment, but that's not going to be an easy conversation to have.
It's really interesting because you could end up being white collar just by doing blue collar jobs.
Just by doing what?
You can become white collar by doing blue collar jobs.
I guess in a sense.
In some ways. But I need for this. For what I'm going into, in order to be a registered teacher, I need a specific degree, and so I need the postgraduate for that.
Yeah, to my knowledge, here stateside, I think you pretty much have to be a master's degree to be like a full-time teacher.
Mm-hmm.
I know it varies from school district to school district, but I know that you can be a substitute teacher without a degree, depending on where you are. But they'll like pay you more for having a degree and being a sub teacher. It's what I'm looking into as a day job to temporarily offset what's provide a temporary living while I build this professional YouTube career. So yeah, basically when you learn how money works and how the American economy shifts, you want nothing to do with the traditional, go to college, work for 40 years, and try and hope to retire off of any of that. I mean, in America, that's just simply not the reality anymore.
Yeah, I think the US and Australia always have the differences. Like I said, I'm sort of caught in the middle. I see lots of different careers happen in different structures of business. It's probably not as big as a problem here as it is over there.
Yeah, it's mostly because a lot of our jobs are being shipped overseas or automated.
See, we have an outsourcing issue here as well, so as a result, and also because we're a smaller nation, it's difficult for us to have as much work as, say, to compete with someone like the US. You have a lot more people to be doing work. You have a lot more opportunity to produce things. Whereas if anything that we outsource, that instantly has a huge impact because we're only a small amount of people. And it's one of the reasons why I don't have a job right now, because I'm currently in a region that has low industry, and pretty much the only thing we have is tourism. There are farms, but they're 3 hours away because our state's so big. So it's difficult in that regard because, and every time you talk to someone over the phone, they're not with an Australian accent. You're sort of like, oh, that's a bit weird.
Are they talking like they're from India, like this?
Some of them Asian, some of them Islander. Sometimes you can't even tell. And if they sound like they want to kill themselves.
Yeah, I've had my share of grouchy call center people before. It's not fun. Makes you feel like, makes you wonder whether you're the jerk for inconveniencing them, or whether they're just the jerks.
Do you need a hug? What's wrong? Call on them.
Want me to take you out for a drink, man? Something.
You need someone to talk to.
Yeah. Anyway. Hello, darkness, smile, friend. Insert that song there. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Oh gosh, that sounds horrible. I don't know. You should look into self-employment, honestly. If there's that few opportunities out there, Australia. Yeah. Like a YouTube career, Uber, network marketing, Airbnb.
Well, I'm looking into Airbnb. They got some flack lately because something to do with New York and hotels in New York or something, and they banned them because there were people getting into the loopholes and making trouble, and then anyway, I can't remember the whole story. No, I've considered looking into starting my own art and design business, do freelance commission work.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only thing I can think of right now, really. And even then, that would be difficult. As you probably noticed, I've got a few connections overseas, friends in America and whatever, and so I might sell stuff overseas. But I'm very much trying to get into community involvement here first, so I get to know some people, and hopefully, and I have to do practical experience with my degree anyway, so I might end up getting a job through schools that way. So I'll see. I got to play it by ear at the moment, but I have definitely considered starting up my own art business.
Yeah, it sounds like you're quite in a precarious situation. I mean, honestly, it's not that much better here in the States. We have a similar problem of youth unemployment, just maybe for different reasons.
Yeah, I have a friend in Arkansas, and he's always having to get the not so good jobs because where he is just nothing.
It's out in the middle. It's out in the middle of NADD territory. Not a damn thing.
Yeah. So that's the moment too. And if there are, I'll apply for them. But I'm about to go on senior wage, and they want to pay cheap wages, so they're getting 15-year-olds, not 20-year-olds.
Well, definitely pray for your career opportunities then.
Thank you.
No problem. And on that note, tell me, what were your experiences leading up to salvation, and what's your walk with God like now? Because again, I won't say exactly how I know you, but I do know for a fact that you are a Christian, and we've had some interesting conversations in the past.
Yeah. So like anyone's journey, it's filled with ups and downs, whatever. You have moments where you're in it, and moments you're not in it. I didn't really start congregating until my second year of university due to various reasons. And I was talking with my pastor. We'd meet up every week for several weeks and talk about things. And he told me to reflect on, like, make like a sort of timeline as where you thought, God was in your life, started any moments that sort of evidence of that God's in your life. And like the earliest I can trace back to is it's when I was quite young. I was probably about 7 or 8, because I remember praying in 4th grade. And I remember believing in 5th grade, like my knowledge was not great. I had, maybe a mustard seed of faith, but half a mustard seed of knowledge, but it was there. Anyway, it's interesting though, because my family, we didn't go to church. Technically, I wasn't brought up with the church, but the way that our state curriculum used to be, I'm not sure if it is now, but when I was going through it, Christian education was available to the state schools. And so we actually essentially had Sunday school type of teachers come in, they'd volunteer. There was the option for students to opt out if they didn't want it, and some of them did, but most of us got that education. So I recall, grade 1, grade 2, watching these animations of Adam and Eve and Noah's Ark and that sort of thing. So that's when, like, my earliest Christian education was from. One of my children's Bible that I possess, my parents actually did give that to me at Easter when I was in grade 2. And so sort of from there on, I can sort of start to see bits. And by the time I was 12, I could start to discern between good and bad quite clearly. Like, it wasn't anything vague. Like, I didn't have any sort of existential crisis like a lot of teenagers do. It was quite black and white. And then when I went to the Anglican high school, my teachers weren't per se Anglican, but they were Christian. And I was involved with the chapel band. Are you on mute at the moment, or are you just not talking?
No. I did mute myself because I'm just listening, honestly, and I have my microphone on high I don't know, gain or high levels, whatever. So I'm muting it just so you don't. I don't get any sound pollution.
It's a good. I just thought there might have been a connection problem there. Sorry.
Yeah. Basically, you were saying not Anglican per se, but I guess sort of vaguely Australian Protestant.
Yeah. Yeah. So Anglican is Church of England. I guess the American, the variation of that is Episcopalian. I think that's the closest.
Episcopal. Well, I ever since that I was actually in middle school, and there was when I knew this classmate who was Episcopalian. There was a sort of crisis in the Episcopalian Church with the acceptance of gay clergy, and those that didn't capitulate ended up declaring themselves Anglo-Saxon churches. And I'm like, hey, why that denomination specifically?
Yeah. So
I mean, I'm no expert on all the Protestant denominations. I'm non-denominational myself. Closest thing you can call me is Baptist. I just know that Episcopalians have a lot of similarities to both the Catholics and the Anglicans, but I don't know anything else from there. So
yeah. So Anglicans are just essentially the Church of England who were influenced by the other reformers and started their own thing, and so they do visually very, very Roman, but theologically a bit different. And it's similarly, probably at the same time as you guys had that drama, England and Australia too were discussing ordination of gays and things like that. And that's something that's practiced here in Australia. No, but I went to Anglican school. I had just general Christian teachers, and so we actually had chapel service every week. But when I was in my second year there, we actually had like a Bible study youth group thing, and so I actually learnt a fair bit from there. And then I went to this big Pentecostal youth conference thing that same year, and that was interesting. I mean, I haven't been back, but that was definitely part of the journey. When I got to grade 10, the school for some reason had stopped our chapel services. The grade above me had it once a month, but we didn't have it at all. And that being not really part of the church myself, except only through school, that sort of, I realise now, at the time I didn't, but I realise now that actually affected my faith a little bit. And then I switched schools because we had some issues. And I went to a Roman Catholic school, and despite my parents not really being churchy people, they said, don't be a Roman Catholic because we're of like a Protestant background. And so I didn't partake in much of what they had on offer there. I was wary of it, sort of thing. No offense to any Roman Catholics.
Dude, I'm from the border, right? I'm in El Paso, Texas. I'm on the border with Mexico. A city that's like 70% Hispanic, most of them Catholic. And I will tell you, you go to various people's houses and you'll see signs. My mouth's a little sticky. Sorry, it's these ramen noodles I'm eating in the microwave. And the microwave in the business building was broken, so I just let them soak in cold water. So, it's hashtag the struggle is real in college. Back to the point. You will see that especially Mexican Catholics are extremely tribal. You'll see signs on some of their houses, esta casa es católica. No aceptamos propaganda protestante. Ni de otras denominaciones, which means, and by the way, I suck. I don't speak much Spanish at all. I took it in high school. That's the only reason why I can speak any of it. I'm an American. I speak English. But basically that means we are a Catholic house. We don't accept Protestant propaganda or any other denominations. You will see that around here, so trust me. I understand what it's like to be a Protestant surrounded by Catholics. I get you.
One of the what's the surprising things actually about the school, and I'm not sure that it was a Jesuit Roman Catholic school, and the Jesuits are I don't know how to explain it. You can't say they're a denomination within Roman Catholic. That's not quite right. But they are a particular bunch of Roman Catholics who sometimes have things in conflict with other Catholics. But this school was a Jesuit school one. And I don't know if it's because of that or because of other reasons, but it was actually fairly laid back. I mean, we did have mass, there were prayers, there were a couple of Hail Marys, but for the most part, it was very open. And also just being Australians as they are, we're not very, there's not much pride, there's not much denominational pride. People are pretty, even if you are from another denomination, they're still willing to talk to you and whatever. So it was actually pretty good, and I got a pretty good education from there. But as a result, I undertook a class, an elective called Study Religion, and we studied all sorts of religions, mainly the top 5 in Australia. But we had like a unit studying Buddhism, and so you end up seeing like all this sort of New Age Buddhism, Gnostic type of stuff. And because I didn't have really any fellowship at the time, I was kind of going down in the faith, and I got distracted. And for about a year or so, I didn't consider myself Christian. It was very, I wasn't New Age, I wasn't that far, but I was agnostic. Essentially, I was very disaffected. I didn't have any sort of guidance. Anyway, but I was still making friends online, talking to people. And a friend of mine we started talking, and I was like, oh, we hadn't talked in a while, and I said, oh, I'm not a Christian anymore. And they're like, what? And they didn't push me into anything, but it was just, I sort of came back to it just through open discussion with them. And they were answering my questions and sort of mentoring me. And so this is about halfway through grade 12. And even though I wasn't saying I was part of the church, having the Roman Catholics there in there, everything did help influence, like, even their traditions actually did help influence me to bring me back to the faith. It was something I could always reflect on, is what I mean. And then talking to other friends, and then I get into university, and I'm praying and I'm asking and I'm trying to read the Bible again, and then I'm asking God to help me because I couldn't congregate at that point. And so I came across some, I guess they're non-denominational, the kind of apostolic folk. And I was doing Bible study with them, and then meeting a few other people, and then come the second year, and then that year I started really getting into theology. So I'm a huge theology nerd now, and on top of my studies in my spare time, I would just read about, and I had a friend who got confirmed into Lutheran church, and I was like, I don't really know much about Lutheran, so I just researched it. I started learning about Calvinism, and it was mainly sort of the whole Reformation thing. And then come the second year, I take myself off to a Lutheran church, and I started congregating with them. Last year, so I'm definitely a Christian. Sort of going back and forth between the sort of Calvinism versus Lutheranism, all the nerdy stuff, and I began to understand the different denominations more, and such and such. And that's where I am at the moment. I'm not congregating at the moment, but I have a lot of fellowship online. That's my journey, my faith journey so far. That was a bit of a long story, but
no, it was an interesting one, and I have noticed that you participated in and promoted as well various Christian groups on DeviantArt. So I can tell that you're pretty involved in the online sphere, that is.
Oh yeah.
So, sorry, continue.
Oh, that's fine.
All right. So as an Australian conservative and a Christian, how would you describe your political views overall, given your life experiences?
So I call myself a capitalist. So that's right-wing, libertarian. I have a few friends who are anarcho-capitalists. I'm still trying to figure out how I feel
so you
about
so you,
that. Whenever I hear anarcho, I'm like, no, I'm not an anarchist.
You've got libertarian friends that are so libertarian that they're actual ANCAPs. That is hilarious.
No, they just, well, I mean, because to my understanding, an anarchist is different to a capitalist. A capitalist has a little bit more, they're just that little bit higher, if that makes sense. But a libertarian seems to be rather broad in the people they have. Like, they might have people they believe only believe in small tax. There might be some believe in no tax. Does that make sense?
Well, yeah. Have you seen the political spectrum graph before?
Yeah, the axis.
Yeah, the axis. It goes from the y-axis from top to bottom. Higher up you go is the more authoritarian you are. The further down you go is libertarian. Left is economic authoritarian, or communistic, and further right is complete free market. So anarcho-capitalists would be at the very bottom corner of quadrant 4. That's where anarcho-capitalists are. They're basically anarcho-capitalists are basically the most hardcore of libertarians. They believe that the government is completely illegitimate, and that the only way to ensure property rights, et cetera, is to live by the non-aggression principle in an anarchic society.
Yeah. So
In my opinion, right-wing libertarians are true libertarians. The lefty ones are just the guns, weed, and gay marriage
the
filthy degenerates.
left ones are just they're like, you do.
Sorry, say that again. Your mic cut out.
Oh, sorry. I was just saying that the left wing are just the hippie. They're just hippies. They can say, do whatever you want, man. But I'm not going to think about anything.
Yeah, that's basically what the lefty libertarians are. They're the hippie ones. They're not authoritarian per se, but they're not exactly very principled people either.
So, given that position you were just talking about in the bottom right corner of the quadrant, I would come up on the diagonal like a bit, because I do believe in small government, but not as extreme as anarchy sort of thing. Mm-hmm. And being a monarchist too, I'm gonna have, there's like a joint, there's like some restraints there. But I'm not central. I am on the right. I support like a small tax, but there's so many different types of tax and so many levels, and it's not going to get into that because there's just too much to discuss there. But
yeah, especially you're not going to go exploding on the libertarian rant of how taxation is theft and how and how the government shouldn't be involved in building roads and school. I mean, don't get me wrong. I don't think education should be federalized.
I agree with you on that one. Then going into education, it's sort of bugs me that I see so many in Australia politicians not talking about education. Like, and if there is education, it's things like SJW stuff. And I'm like, I don't want any of that near my education. There's nothing really. They don't talk about the different effects that a more nationalized versus a localized one. Like, you can have science, whatever, and to have everyone together on the same level as English, but you definitely need to. I mean, it's similar. It's similar just to the government in general. You need that. It's not just a localized thing. It's a smaller government, because like we have a small government here. I mean, we have a local government here, but they're not small. They're a big local government, and there's lots of corruption there. And it's the same thing for education. Like, you could have someone be sent up from the capital to go teach at the school or whatever, but that doesn't mean it's actually beneficial. Get the most out of it for the students. I mean, the most beneficial way of doing it. So I do believe in small government, but I'm not completely opposed to some tax, if that makes sense. I definitely do not think the government is a charity case, though lots of people treat it as such, like they're entitled to everything. Okay, I'm not in support of that. For example, but also I'm brought up in a time where I'm used to the government being there anyway for roads and hospitals and things like that. So, which are sustainable, but they just need better management. So maybe that just comes down to how the tax is used rather than how much is being given, maybe.
Yeah, I think it's basically fair to say that you're, I could best characterize you kind of like how I'd characterize myself, which is a conservative with some libertarian leanings. Like, you're not
that's why
like you're not a big government. Yeah. You're not a big government conservative, right? Like, you're not for like you're not for like a lot of foreign intervention. I mean, I know you're Australian, so you guys don't do a lot of foreign intervention. I don't imagine. But I don't know. I know I'm speaking from my American perspective here, but basically, is it safe to say that you're a smaller government conservative? You don't believe in the government having a hand in business or corporatism or foreign intervention? Is it basically?
Yeah.
Basically, I guess you could say conservatarian.
Conservatarian. Well, I mean, that's why I just went with capitalist, and then I went to go make that differentiation with an anarcho-capitalist, because it's capitalism is a broad thing, and then you've got, some are more extreme than others.
Mm-hmm.
and I'm a moderate capitalist.
We'll just say you're a conservative. Just a traditional small government,
Yeah, I'm
Western
a basic conservative.
Western Protestant work ethic, small government conservative.
Quite. You just mentioned the Protestant work ethic. And you mentioned this to me earlier, and I actually have a question about it. I'm not sure what you mean by that. Protestant work ethic.
Oh, okay. I'd have to go in a bit of historical context. So the Protestant Reformation, we all know it basically had three main breakaways. It had John Calvin, it had Martin Luther, it had King Henry VIII. Previously, the last big church split was the Great Schism. Now, the Great Schism was over, my centralized church government is better than your centralized church government. But what the Protestant Reformation did was, and this was fully realized by the American Revolution, it changed how Christians viewed the government, because traditionally, what did Christians always teach? Oh, pray for your leaders because they are ordained by God. Don't try to overthrow your government. Well, the thing is, the Great Schism wasn't good enough, because clearly people are still finding heretical things being taught by the Catholic Church. Martin Luther, John Calvin, and King Henry VIII. Although King Henry VIII is just because he didn't want to have to execute his wives, but the Pope wouldn't let him divorce. So his reasons kind of sucked. But I use Martin Luther as a good example. The Catholic Church was so rigid, and he found so many problems with traditional Catholic teaching, but couldn't teach them, and got in trouble for him. So he completely left the church altogether with his new followers, the Lutherans. And they inherently distrusted centralized church bodies. Now, eventually, this would materialize itself a couple hundred years later, in the 1700s, as even the Church of England was becoming, what was still had leftover elements of the Catholic Church in it. That's what the Puritans tried to free themselves of, to purify themselves from the remnants of the Catholic Church, such as centralized church bureaucracy. So in America, the American Revolution solidified this notion of Protestant work ethic, that Protestant Christians inherently distrusted highly centralized, highly authoritarian governments, because they would inherently corrupt God's word. They would use God's word to quash dissent and to religiously persecute people. I mean, if you look at all of the first, at least all of the first English colonists to America, they were all there to escape religious persecution.
Yeah.
So when I say Protestant work ethic, I mean, you don't rely on. Protestants are uniquely individualistic. They're very individualistic because of their history. They distrust authoritarian governments, and because of that, and I'm noticing more atheists and agnostics acknowledge that if it wasn't for this concept of Protestant work ethic, the Anglo-Saxon tradition, if you will, which America basically perfected. It started with Great Britain and its colonies, and starting with America and then spreading to the rest of the Western world. Individualistic capitalism wouldn't exist, basically. We would all still be living under monarchies as colonies, mercantilism.
It's interesting you bring up the word individualistic, because ultimately the church is not in support of individualism, because we're a corporate group. We work together, we're a family, body of Christ, that sort of thing. And there are lots of the particulars within, and I mean, I'm talking about individualism as like it's ism. It's something that it's like a Gnostic thing. It's people battering with their own bat, and in a political sense, I get that. But for the Christian, it's actually something where you should be working together. And I think, that still works with capitalism though, because you trade with each other and big purchasings of each other. You can even give charity to each other. I just don't like that. I just don't like that word individualistic. Independent to some degree, but not
independent
completely.
of centralized authority, like
Sure, yeah.
like the man of the house. You know, the Christian family is its own individual unit at the end of the day. Yes, it is healthy for churches to meet together to help each other grow in the faith, but it's not totalitarian and authoritarian. That was something that that was something that the Protestant tradition changed, is that it limited the scope of ostracization. You know, yes, you can't have complete individualism or complete collectivism, but what it seems that the Protestant tradition did was remove the unhealthy extents of collectivism that the church had grown corrupted with.
Dictatorship.
The sort of dictatorship. If you really look at the teachings of Jesus, you know, you'll have some people try to claim that Jesus was a socialist, and it's like and it's like no, he wasn't, not at all. He taught, give unto Caesar that which is Caesar's. And if you think about it, Jesus was asked about government multiple times, and he never gave a straight answer. And even go further back in the Old Testament, you know, you have when the Israelites were begging for a king, and God said, no, I'm not going to give you a king, because if I do, that king will usurp his authority ordained by me and then claim to speak for me. And they kept begging, and he's like, okay, fine, I'll give you guys a king, and I'll show you why I don't want a theocracy. Like, Christianity is very unique in that Christianity is explicitly anti-theocracy in a way. Like, in many ways, you could argue Jesus is almost a libertarian himself, because every Christian's walk with God is an individual walk. And the church and the family are there to support and help grow, neither complete individual nor complete collective.
He's not an anarchist, though.
No, clearly not. Because again, give unto Caesar that which is Caesar's, and unto God that which is God's. That you don't have to be wholly controlled by the collective, but being a total individual isn't right either. You know, you need bits of both.
Yeah, sure.
So that's what I meant by the whole Protestant work ethic thing.
Sure.
So that being said, I think you pretty much gave the pretty clear answer. You know, what you feel the legitimate function of government is, right? And how deep a hand do you think it should have in the lives of private citizens?
Oh, hang on, my thing's going missing. I found it so good. The screen disappeared. How much should the government have involved with
involvement? Yeah, involvement in the private life of the individual. You know, whether it's, you know, family, money, taxes, you know, anything. Like, how far should the government intrude on the individual or the family's life?
Well, they shouldn't intrude. That is not encourageable for anybody. It's difficult because I'm used to a government that, whether it's left or right, it's still very similar structured here. They will provide to some extent, but personally, I'm not expecting them to provide or tell people they are entitled to have so much welfare or something like that. So, I mean, I'm very passionate welfare. So when it comes to the government providing for, you know, people just to, and the problem is in Australia is that lots of people abuse the welfare. Like, if you're disabled, like, sure, if you are a pension, you really can't afford to look after yourself, sure. Even though there's still parts of me that disagree with that, because I don't see the government as charity. You know, that's why we have the church. You know, the church should be there to look after people, but people aren't Christian anymore. People, you know, it's a really awkward phase. So I'm trying to juggle between, okay, so the secular nation needs the government to look after them, but there's still so much that they shouldn't be doing. Like, sure, go make sure the roads are safe, do all that, but don't go spending all our money. Actually, you know, a lot of it is money going to the wrong places. It's not so much their involvement, like they do regulations and laws may limit small business people. You know, we have a farm and we have regulations at the moment which were cut back a bit because we got a conservative government back in and then the left came back in, whatever. But the left government said, oh, you can't dig up these weeds on your land because they're native plants, and the environmentalists say you're not allowed to do that. And like, but we have cows and they graze and eat grass. If we don't get rid of the weeds, you know, the grass isn't going to grow. So we got those sorts of complications, and that's something, especially if it's private property, the government should have nothing over. You know, if they said, oh, you know, I don't know, it's that sort of thing I don't support. They should not. So that's where I'm libertarian. Like, private property rights means private property rights. There's always that awkward thing that the governments, I think it's the same, it might be the same in the US, I'm not sure. I mean, in Australia, say if you live near an airport and you buy a house at near this airport, but then the airport had plans and the government owns it and they had plans to expand the airport, they could say, we need you to move house because we're going to dig up your land. And they
I think the concept you're referring to is eminent domain. And yes, in the U.S. that has happened before. In fact, here in El Paso, recently, this has caused a bit of a stir. I think we're building a new like sports rink or arena, something like that, like downtown. Try to kick up our sluggish economy. But they kicked a bunch of people out of their houses and gave them they gave them apartments, but they gave them insufficient time to find new living, etc. And they claimed eminent domain. Like, this is close enough within our area that we we legally we can kick you off your land.
Yeah, and I think when say if even the government originally owned that land, when they sanctioned it off and sold it off to someone else, it's no longer theirs. And it's a very relational thing that the government should be there to work for the people, for the community, but a lot of the times they don't. They do it for their own, monetary gains, and it's sort of that I don't support. They should definitely, even if they were to do that, give them the right amount of time to do so, or buy it off them, not kick them out, whatever, go through the normal process. But if people want to stay there, that's their right, but they don't have that right. It doesn't actually completely exist. There's what I was mentioning before. I don't like how much the government is involved with other countries. That sounds a bit weird, but let me explain myself. So Australia has a lot of money that goes towards Indonesia and China. Do I need to say any more? The biggest communist country, and then the biggest Islamic country, and they're both quite wealthy. We don't need to be donating. Did you know that actually Australian government paid $7 million to Planned Parenthood this year?
Really?
And apparently they've been giving money to your government for that health thing since about 2007. That's when we had
to us, like the US.
Yeah, for the women's health thing, mainly Planned Parenthood, that sort of thing. I had no idea, but it wasn't until Trump pulled out of those funds that our government stepped forward and said we'll continue to support that. And I'm like, I didn't even know we were doing that at all. And I'm like, why our money goes to places where they're not needed and or are irrelevant to us? I'm thinking it's kind of like we've got the opposite going in. Like, we do have regulations that make it difficult for small business, and as a result and all that, but we're outsourcing our money, we're outsourcing our jobs, and sometimes it's not the government's fault, sometimes that's just big companies doing that. But it's sort of a doctrine that's poisoned. It's poisoned both the right and the left. I mean, with the right, you have what are referred to as neoconservatives. Sort of rose in like the 60s, 70s. They were heavily influenced by Keynesian economics, so they're very big on foreign intervention, and I had a professor who, by the way, is actually like the advisor to the college Republicans here, Dr. Timothy Roth. He goes to Washington back and forth a lot, and he actually worked under the Reagan administration, so he knows his stuff.
I took public sector economics class with him, and basically that class taught us about social welfare theory, which is what influenced the policy decisions of Bill Clinton, and to an extent, you could argue, even influenced Reagan, George H.W. Bush, then Clinton, then even possibly G.W. himself. But basically, social welfare theory teaches that if the government has its hand in the economy, it can synthetically make businesses behave more like perfect competitors, subsidize one, tax the other, etc., play favorites for the general welfare of society. Yeah, it's gross generalization, but what the hell is social welfare? What the hell is social justice? What do any of these terms mean? And can you really quantify quote unquote perfect competition? And sad to say, this corporatist attitude has poisoned a lot of right-wing parties in the West, where they'll cooperate perfectly with left-wing parties, to sell out their native population's children's futures to employ Chinese, Indians, people around the world, give them opportunities at the sacrifice of not only our jobs, but also causing wage depression in our country, so that wages don't rise and stay stagnant. I can tell that your country seems in a very similar situation.
We're in an awkward situation. I think last year we were in debt. We had more imports than exports, so that's that international thing. But because we're such a small nation, we rely so much on everybody else around us. And because we lack in manufacturing now, there's very little manufacturing. We still have some food manufacturing, but we don't actually really create anything anymore. The companies like Aldi, who are from Germany, they're coming in and they're setting up their grocery stores everywhere, and they're competing with our main grocery stores. But those grocery stores that already were here, they're already abandoning Australian farmers and everything like that, and they're buying stuff from the US, they're buying stuff from Asia. Most manufacturing is probably done in China. That's being sold in Australia.
So you have the same problem here in America. Everything's made in China.
And people, even so, for example, the car manufacturing business. We have a part of GM Motors called Holden's, kind of like Australian Chevrolet, and we still have headquarters here. But they're the last car manufacturers in Australia. They're shutting down at the end of this year. And they will have no more after that because people buy cars from overseas. We have a lot more Chinese cars coming in now. It's just Asia's taking over. You kind of talked about that puppets on a string. It wouldn't surprise me if anything similar is happening here, where they go, oh, we'll support small business, and then all of a sudden they'll bring the other guys back. It's like this war happening. At the moment, the small business are deeply affected.
The worst part about this corporatism too is that it's funny. It seems as though the left and the right were both sort of half right about something. The left always blamed our economic problems. Oh, the 1%, those evil corporations. The right always blamed outsourcing and and overregulation, overtaxation. They blamed. It seemed like the left and the right always seemed to blame two different things, when in reality both were kind of half right. And when you combine their picture together, the big multinational corporations, your Googles, your Apples, they can afford the regulation, the taxation, etc. And it's actually beneficial because if they have their way, it bumps all small businesses out of the market eventually, and before you know it, boom, this big global one world economy and one world order, it can be possible through corporatism, interestingly enough.
Yeah, it can. It's interesting you say that. When I was in high school, before I even understood a lot of politics stuff, when I was like grade 8 or 9, but we were looking into, I was studying business at school though, and so we were looking into the economy and everything like that. The way that I understood it was the right wings, they saved all the money, and then when the left wing got voted in, then they spent all the money, and then the other guys got back in and saved all the money, and then the other guys spent all the money. That's how it mature mind understood it. And to some extent, that kind of, and you're just talking about those half truths. It's sort of like how they were. They both had an idea of what needed to be done, but they just did it sort of in excessive amounts. I can't say that's the same for our mainstream Conservative Party now, because things are shifting. Things are starting to shift here in Australia. I think you still have a huge support for Republicans in America. Our support for our mainstream conservative groups, well, the Prime Minister, who's supposed to be leader of the Conservative Party, just said that the Liberals here are conservatives. He said that the Liberal Party was never a conservative party, so that's a recent media trend. We're all going, whoa! So we have loads of small little minority conservative parties, and two came together recently to make one party. Some coalitions are. There's some gossip about there might be some coalitions happening. We're not so sure.
I'm guessing you have a parliamentary system, kind of like Europe does, where you have all these
we have Westminster, so it's the same as England.
Okay. So you have all these low percentages, and you have like a bunch of different parties, and they form coalitions and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I always find that interesting. Like that America basically has two main parties that compete. And they sort of have these broad left and right groups, but then in Europe you'll have a bunch of different groups representing a bunch of different agendas, but they'll form coalitions to vaguely get each of their goals.
So England and Australia, possibly Canada, I'm not as sure about Canada, but England and Australia are kind of like in between. So we do have these two major left and right. So we have Labour and the Conservatives. I forget what they're called in England, but over here we have it's the Liberal Party, but they have a coalition with the National Party, and they are the other side. Except both mainstream groups have lost a lot of attention lately, and but we're starting to have all these other things, little groups split up on both sides. I think there's more minority groups on the right wing than there are on the left wing. Funny that, but yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I find international politics interesting. I mean, I'm not as studied up as I should be, because frankly, this is what you get for living in the American bubble, is that you're sort of oblivious to everyone else's problems.
You know a lot more than probably the average person.
It's just because I follow a lot of YouTubers. Oh boy. I do hear that the radical left is becoming a problem in Australia, especially like Sydney and Melbourne is where I hear the worst of it is, with groups like Antifa Down Under. Like, can you weigh in at all for our non-Australian audiences? Because I hear they're picking up some steam.
I can't weigh in for Sydney or Melbourne because I've never set foot in those places, and I'm limited with media because I tend to avoid it. Though what I am aware of, there are some radical groups, and they would typically pop up in the capital cities rather than anywhere else. In the state I'm in, we're a more culturally conservative leading state. We, I think, like every Queenslander almost like hates a greenie. We do have lefties up here, but it's interesting because when we go to the elections, there's always those few regions where they just know the Conservatives always going to get the vote. Doesn't matter who's running for it. So we're actually kind of like the opposite. It's funny how the further south you go, the further different the mentalities change. Melbourne is typically known, not Victoria, which is the state that Melbourne's in, but particularly Melbourne is a very what we would call greenie. I think you have a Greens party in the US. I'm not sure
we
if there
do
are similarities.
We do have a Green Party, but it's a tiny third party that nobody cares about, and those people just end up voting for the Democrats anyway.
So I like the point you just made there. Essentially, that's how the Greens Party used to be here, but they have grown over time. They're still a small party. Like, they're still smaller than our shrinking mainstream Conservative Party. But these are your extreme environmentalists. These are your pro-Islam, pro-gay. There is still some of that within the Labour Party, which is left wing, but the Greens are like the extremists of them, and they all pretty much reside in Melbourne. And so that's how I perceive Melbourne. So it would surprise me if there are Antifa people down there. There isn't as much of a conflict in regional areas, like at all. Australia, we're very laid back. And
so you've told me.
And I would assume it's like this in any country. You're always going to have people who just want to give up on politics, and so it's definitely not as much. And our universities aren't as political as yours either. We do have universities that do have, they have the communist group, they have this, they have that. But that's really only found in the capital cities. My closest capital city is 3 hours away.
So basically, it's the same situation as here in America. That all your radical progressive leftists, they'll always be found in the urban, especially the coastal urban areas. But like the middle America, the working class parts. It sounds like similar situation with you. Like the urban areas attract all the crazies.
Well, you need a skyscraper, for that sort of that sort of mentality. It's I don't think it's nearly as blown up as it is in America. Like we do have feminism and stuff here, but it's nowhere near as big. Definitely, part of that main reason is because we don't have as many people, but it's not as big as an issue. Like we do have this pro-gay, pro-Islam thing, but it's not so much social justice warrior, if you know what I mean. That huge tension is not as much. It's much more subtle, and they try to bring in a new curriculum they called it safe schools, and it was about this anti-bullying thing for people who with gender problems and whatever. And
oh dear Lord,
really bad. Like it's like about chest binding and all sorts of different things, and they like had the whole curriculum set up so people could, so students, like little kids, like 10-year-olds, would go online and watch gay stuff, like bad perverted things. But all these parents and families, like religious and non-religious, came out and protested they wrote letters to their representatives and whatever, and then they axed it across 2 states. And one of them is Victoria, which has Melbourne in it, so Melbourne's probably upset about that.
Wow. I guess I can kind of see why Antifa Down Under is.
So it's subtle. It's there. It's nowhere near as much as the US, but it's not strong enough because enough right-leaning or just traditional leaning, whether they're left or right. Because in Australia, like the Labor Party is kind of split in its supporters. Like the supporters might be like your typical feminist, or they might be, I don't like feminism at all, I'm just left economically, they're not anything to do with that. And that's the issue with Australia, because we're such a smaller nation. The major parties are such a mixed bag. And even though your leaders could be full-on socialists, that doesn't mean their supporters are, which is really difficult to work with. And yet the Conservatives are pissed off, so they're making up their own. Minority parties and whatever, and trying to fix it. And the lefties just sort of go, no, we have to have unity and everything. And then they find themselves getting confused. I don't know whether to be alt-right or not.
Oh gosh.
Basically,
America's actually not too far behind there. Like the Democrat Party has fractured. The Republican Party is fractured. I mean, America's in such a strange political place.
Right-wing politics is really messy in Australia at the moment, because there's so many people calling themselves conservatives, but they all have different views. But the reason why they've started their own group is because they're not happy with the mainstream. And we're trying to make amends, and it may take a few years, but hopefully we can prevent, the weird left stuff that's happening at the moment in the West. One of our biggest issues is immigration, and it's not like a Hispanic illegal immigration thing. It's to do with boat people and plane people, because illegal planes come in as well as illegal boats.
So basically, you're more akin to like Florida. You're more akin to Florida, where you can basically call illegal immigrants anger babies.
I don't know, but that's we have an issue with immigration before we have issues with anything else. Probably the second biggest one is, where's our money going? Is it going to Australia? Is it going to rich countries? And then the I can actually call the whole social justice thing a minority. It's still one of the bigger ones, but it's one of the smaller ones. Thankfully, that might change. Especially people still trying to push the whole gay marriage thing. The government still doesn't know whether we should have a plebiscite or referendum on it. Everyone's trying to. Oh, it's so messy at the moment.
Yeah, I never hear much news out of Australia.
That's because you're the USA.
Well, no, I follow YouTubers and YouTube channels that give me my share of international news, and there is for the Rebel Media, there is actually this one guy from Australia there, but I actually don't hear much from him, so I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely aren't as over the top with our media in regards to politics as what the US is. Like when you had your elections, like we had more coverage over your elections than we had over our elections. Like your USA are like to be loud, and they're not gonna. And when you're loud, you can't really hear anyone else around you. And it was so much easier to follow your election than my own. Our campaigns go for 2 months and yours goes for 2 years. That's possibly one of the reasons why, because it's just so quiet to begin with. But because we're in so much turmoil at the moment, there's probably no clear message coming out of Australia right now. Everyone is trying to find a position, abandon something, prevent something, and I mean, it's true, we're awkward. I mean, you guys are awkward, but you've had your election and you're heading somewhere now, and things have changed drastically, so there's lots to hear about, but everything's just sort of, it goes here and then there, and that's Australia at the moment. That's probably why I don't hear much about it. If we fall into recession, you'll hear about it.
Oh, okay, I get you. Generally, you guys just sort of keep to yourselves and have problems with figuring out what the hell's going on right now.
Pretty much.
Oh gosh. So on that note, what are your thoughts on Donald Trump? I'm curious.
Yeah, I've written out some things here.
I'm very curious because I don't get to talk to many foreigners about the God Emperor.
So I don't, as far as I know, it's not American, so I'm doing my best here. As far as I know, I support mostly the Republican Party, I think. I kind of approached your own election like as if it was an Australian one with the Westminster system. Because over here, we don't vote for who leads the party. We only vote for the party. The party figure out who their leader is. And so when we do that, we have to consider, who might be elected into the House of Representatives, who might be in the Senate, who might be this, who might be that, who's going to be the advisors, whatever. And so I was looking at your Republican Party as a whole, and whilst I prefer Ted Cruz, I went, Ted Cruz is probably still going to get his seat. He will still have to work with Trump. You still have all these other Republicans that Trump has to work with. So whilst Trump is very boisterous and he can say some very immature things, he's going to have to work with people who are different from him. So that instantly was like, fine, I'm okay with that. But I think America needed, and it's something that Australia needs too, and lots of the conservatives in Australia are saying this as well, we need a figure like Trump, because he is so loud and he's so straightforward, and even if you can't agree with everything and you think he might be too immature for the job. He actually does have a lot of experience, and his network is a trustworthy network, and he's smart. Even if you don't think he's smart, he knows his business. You know, like I said, he's got a good network, and so that I put trust into. You know, yeah. Does that cover everything?
No, I get you. I get you. I mean, obviously, I mean, you said so yourself. You're not as well versed in American politics, and I honestly don't expect you to be. No, I'm a proud Trump supporter. And again, on the border, that's, you'd think that'd kind of be a crime. There's actually a lot of Trump supporters down here who have to be secret Hispanic Trump supporters because their families would totally disown them. But I loved the fact that he actually addressed the immigration problem, where so few presidents or even candidates in recent years have even dared to touch, and the economy and terrorism. You know, like even if again, yeah, he may be a little bit, you know, a little bit crazy and unhinged. You know, I'm not gonna lie. I was a Ted Cruz person too, but Trump was my second choice because for me, Cruz could be more focused, but he could still kick your ass in a debate. You know, like I've seen Ted Cruz debate. He's polite, he's classy, but he can show fire and anger and shoot you down and shoot your stupidity down if he has to. But and I won't lie, I was kind of worried at first when Trump made the nomination. But the more I saw that he was just saying what was on his mind, I'm like, you know what? American politics needs this. You know, we need this whole damn system shaken up for once.
Yeah, and that's what I think. I was so glad he won, because it was like this relief. You kind of go, finally something's actually going to be done. And him versus Hillary. Sure, Trump is quite outspoken, and for good reason. But do you want someone who's honest, or do you want someone who's deceptive? And how many people have come out now against Hillary who've worked close with her or Bill, and they say they're just crazy people. Like,
they are. They're absolutely malicious, evil people.
It's good that Trump is showing his true colors. Who are like, okay, I can put up with that. But you don't know what are the Clintons hiding. You know? And so when it comes to that comparison, of course I would prefer Trump over that. You know, in Australia, when we did have media coming from your elections and the campaigns and everything, we got a lot of Trump. We didn't get much Hillary. We got a lot of Trump. The majority of Trump was negative stuff. And it was the same thing over and over again. It was him insulting someone, doing this, doing that. You know, all the good things he was saying, they weren't showing that to us. And so I have to deal with so many Australians here who only used to watching one channel of news and whatever. And they go, I hate Trump. And I'm like, you've already heard this much from him. There's this much left. You know, when we barely heard anything about Hillary Clinton. And again, like media likes to talk about negative things. And so really the only thing we heard from Clinton was the email thing when it first started, but we didn't hear anything following up from it. You know, they want to follow up Trump on his tax scandal, whatever was going on, but they don't, there was nothing from the other side. And so over here, they're very trying much to get into people's minds that it's a very bad thing that just what happened to the US, even though they had about 3 channels televising the election and just showing him win. I watched that thing live. That was exciting.
That was glorious. That was glorious.
And then I was watching like all the compilations of things on YouTube afterwards about all the TV presenters getting upset, and they're like, even if Trump wins the swing states, he won't win. And it's like, are you sure about that?
Insert the video moments of him being like, wrong.
You are fake news.
Dude, I love his war against the media. I absolutely love it. They have deserved it for decades, and it has pissed me off that no presidential candidate has gone as whole hog as he has. Honestly, it has been beautiful. And especially like they've been going full feral, full animal. They've been showing their true colors, especially with this whole CNN doxing situation. You know, this shows that the media have isolated themselves in their own little bubbles, completely oblivious to the majority of America, They think that all of America thinks the same way that New York City and Los Angeles does, when none of us want a damn thing to do with them or their culture. They ignored our problems. 8 years of Obama, and America was worse off. And it's funny because middle America came out in droves to vote for him. They thought he was going to be the great hope of America. I mean, I was smart enough not to believe that. But the rest of America finally, 8 years and a bunch of empty promises, and people were like, you know what, screw you. You can call me a racist all you want, but I'm going to vote for I don't have a job. I can't afford your elitist, your coastal elite morality. I can't afford that. My factory is closing. I'm losing my job. I can't feed my family, and that's what it came down to, was economics and immigration. So. Yeah, I mean, I can criticize him on a couple of things so far, but honestly, I like a majority of what he's done.
Yeah, and he's followed through like almost instantly, like all those things he signed, within days of office, and he got rid of it all, and people were like, he's doing it. I'm like, well, that's what he said he was going to do.
Yes, the media reported the president is doing exactly what he said he'd do. When's the last time any media outlet ever reported that about a politician? When's the last time a news network or any news media said current politician doing exactly what said?
Have you seen that recent, you just mentioned CNN before, have you seen that recent Pray for CNN video where he's talking with Trump?
Which one?
It's just Google Pray for CNN, and there's a Trump and Putin in front of the press, and then Putin leads over to Trump and he goes, are these the guys who've been telling lies about you? They're doing the fake news. And then Trump goes, yeah, these are the ones. And then Putin starts laughing his head off, and then they put it in the back and they're playing scary music like he's about to wreak havoc onto CNN. It's so good. It's so funny. You'll find it on YouTube.
Oh, I'm sure it will.
That's it, because they recently had the world leaders meeting in Europe, and it's from one of the things there.
The G20.
Yeah.
Oh, and this whole Russia thing is so stupid. There was never any proof for it. They're pushing it because they know that they've been blown out of the water. I'm not kidding. This entire election cycle, they lost the House. I'm sorry. Okay, but the past few years, they've lost the House, they've lost the Senate, they've lost governorships, they've lost mayorships, they've lost the presidency now, and now they're beginning to lose the Supreme Court. The Democrat Party has been blown out of the water, and they are desperate to find any dirt they can.
What about the recounts they've had? So they had one for Wisconsin, found out that there were people voting illegally twice with dead people.
No, here's the problem. Here's the problem. In America, voter fraud has been a problem for like decades now. And they always vote Democrat. We have a tendency to have, especially states or cities or that have lax or no voter ID laws. You'll have a lot of votes tallied as Mickey Mouse. Not even kidding. You'll have dead people voting. You'll have people voting twice. You'll have people with fake names and fake social security numbers voting. You'll have foreigners voting. And especially the Project Veritas videos, where they actually got DNC members to admit that they bust people around to vote multiple times. It's funny. In some of these recounts, I mean, there's some states that didn't get recounted. I would have loved to have seen the result. But the whole, she won the popular vote. First of all, I don't believe that, because I'd love to see how many millions, because don't forget, it was a very narrow margin, only 3 million more to Hillary's credit.
Sure.
But imagine if you cast
got less than that. I could be wrong.
Well, yeah, it's like I don't know. Maybe.
It's minimal, yeah.
Yeah, but again, what if you were to if someone were to go in and take out all the illegal votes, and they actually recently went in and counted all of the illegal votes from the 2012 election, and it was something like 4 or 5 million. Imagine if similar numbers were this time around.
And that's optional voting. That's not even people being forced to vote. Like, we don't have optional voting here. Everyone has to vote.
Wow.
And so we're probably going to have an even bit, well, we have ID stuff, like they have to check it off, and I think for the most part they're pretty good on that. But you're always going to have those few that section of people that vote and they either have no clue or they don't care, and it's like they're putting like this information down and but Mickey Mouse, yeah, that's crazy, that's terrible. Like, how are they not checked up on that? And what about the people counting the votes? Surely they just throw them in the bin. No, we'll count it.
No, it's because a lot of the people who are the election clerks are bought off, like they're owned by,
How though? Like, surely.
It's amazing. It's amazing how political corruption works, isn't it? It infects the most innocuous and even the most sacred of places.
I was talking about the Australian response to the election and everything like that, and some of my co-workers were like pissed off because they're like, you didn't even win the popular vote. We have a constitutional voting system here too. Where you have, is it constitutional? Is that the right word? No. What am I thinking of?
Mandatory.
No, I think, is it constitutional? Yeah, where you vote like per region sort of thing, and then it's like the majority. It's like House representatives. If you've got so many things, you get the seat. Right, and that's how Trump won. So it was called constitutional. I'm getting words mixed up here.
Well, the even if, and that's what I mean, is that even if she had technically won by some miracle, the problem is that popular vote is not a good metric to go by. There's a reason why why there are no pure democracies in the world. We are a republic, because the founding fathers knew for a fact, and they were looking to Europe, seeing that
constitutional. Sorry, I was thinking electoral for some reason. We have
electoral.
Yeah.
There's a reason why the electoral college is in place, because
don't know why I was thinking constitution. Anyway.
Yeah, there's an expression referred to as tyranny of the majority, and what that basically means is that by logic, most people are going to be in urban centers, cities, major cities.
Right. Yeah.
And they'll be thumbing their noses, as the urbanite snobs that they are, at the far less populated rural, agricultural, and industrial areas. So think about it. All a candidate would have to do is to kiss the ass of the urbanites, and boom, sweet landslide election.
Essentially, we have a very similar system here as well as you guys do there, and it's for that reason, so that it's not all concentrated in those capital cities who don't know anything about the actual working class.
Mm-hmm.
And there were people in Australia complaining. They're like, he didn't win the popular vote, he only won the other thing. And it's like, okay, well, first of all, not only do we have a system very similar here in Australia, so you're an Australian complaining about a system that you already have, but that's how US has always had it. All the Democratic leaders were elected like that. Why not this Republican? What, you crazy? Like, you try to reason with him.
In a nutshell, it's little security nets like the Electoral College, or like the fact that the Senate gives 2 senators per state, no matter what their population size, whereas the House gives the number of congressmen by population size. The eventual compromise that they came up with when writing the Constitution was to give small states just enough power to be able to override the big states if necessary.
Yeah, so it was an equal playing ground.
Well, not completely equal. I do agree that the majority should have a little bit of extra power over the minority, but not so much so that they leave the working class, middle America, middle Australia, middle wherever out in the dirt. Yeah. So there's a reason why I don't put a lot of stock into popular vote, because you realize that 70% of the population is located in like 3 cities in America.
Exactly.
So. not related, but but one of the latter questions. What are your thoughts on the alt-right? I've already predefined it for you, and I've defined it for the audiences before. You know, they have no core economic philosophy, but they have dedicated themselves as a white identitarian movement to counter social justice warriors. You know, because evil straight white men. You know, they feel, okay, if everyone can be proud of who they are, why can't we? You know, they're not necessarily racist, but they do have separatist elements to them, and they're, again, it's identity politics for white people. You know, what are for white Western people? What are your thoughts, if any, on the alt-right?
So, I sort of associate myself with alt-right to some extent. It's a bit difficult because I'm Australian. The majority of them are American. From my understanding, it's a form of populist movement. I know populism has a few different definitions. I know one of them, I've looked into it. It might include multiple partisan views, but they're coming together for one thing. So it's like you said, it's like this political correctness type of thing, and you know, with all the memes and everything online, they're typically anti-SJW and the whole Kekistan thing. So that's how I've got like a car.
It's a patch.
ID card.
No, it's a patch. It's a patch I can put on. I can put on this hat, and I bought it.
We should make up ID cards, and then like like this is how I identify. Yeah. Anyway, and so I'm coming into it as a foreigner because for the most part it's mainly concentrated on American issues. We do have some political correctness issues here in Australia too, though, so that's why I can associate with it. And that's how I understood it to be. Though I'm involved with some groups online involved with it, and it's not all of them are not white. There are black people, there are Asian people. There's so many different types of people involved. So it's not a white supremacist thing. The only issue is that there are a faction of them who might be fascists. There are a faction of them who might be extreme anarchists. There might be a faction, and that's why I said they're kind of like populists, because they've got multiple different parties sort of involved. And that's how I've come to understand it. That's how I've seen it. I mean, I'm not on campus in the US on any university, so it's not like I'm involved with any in-group. So that's only my experience with them. And it's interesting because like the word alt-right, you know, alternative right-wing, you know, but some of them support Trump, you know, and so, but that's not alternative, that's mainstream. So I'm sort of, you know, still figuring it out. But you know, in Australia, I'm sort of, if we concentrate the issues on Australian politics, I am like an alternative right-wing sort of thing. You know, I get the jokes, I get the sarcasm, but I'm not a white supremacist. I'm not that kind of alt-right, if that makes sense.
No, I get you. That's a somewhat accurate characterization of the alt-right. Although the whole Kekistan thing, it's actually a joke at the expense of the alt-right, because Kekistan, the whole joke is making fun of identity politics. So the social justice left hates it, but the alt-right despises it because they realize that it ruins the white nationalism message, and that the alt-right is basically a movement for white nationalists and white separatists, basically. Now, that doesn't mean that they're racist, but yeah, sure, you and me are sort of a new alternative, more as Milo Yiannopoulos would put it, we're sort of the culturally libertarian right. But I would not consider myself alt-right, and frankly I sympathize with them quite a bit, because honestly I like white people better. Just saying. Just saying. But I don't personally find them all that useful. I don't find them terribly offensive. I just don't find them all that useful.
There probably is a bit of confusion, especially with because, like, for example, Milo doesn't identify with them, but other people identify him with them. So there's a confusion as to like, and I have a slightly different perspective from you because I'm from a different part of the world, and but as I said before, I appreciate the sort of sarcasm that comes out of the sort of Kekistani thing, and that is present among some alt-righters. Some of them don't care about it, some of them do. It's just really it's just one part of anti-SJW, and that's probably the only sort of thing I have to do with it, because I think the alt-right in the US have something against some Jewish communities, and I don't understand that because I got nothing to do with it.
they don't particularly like the Jews, and the reason that is because it seems as though a lot of the people that were responsible for like some of the most sinister things in recent history were all Jews. Well, Marx was a Jew, Engels was a Jew, Trotsky was a Jew, George Soros is a Jew. All the Frankfurt School guys, scholars, they were all Jews. But they were all secular Jews. They had abandoned they had abandoned their faith and become slave to materialism, and they all became these evil fascists, communists, and or globalists. So that's why they distrust Jews, because they own all the banks, they own all everything.
I think definitely one of their problems is that they just don't present themselves very well, but that's maybe a deliberate thing.
No, the problem is that the alt-right doesn't exactly have a very coherent message. I mean, they seem to know what the problem is more than most people do, which is that white people are becoming an endangered species, and more and more in the West becoming shamed for no fault of their own because they happen to be born the wrong skin color. But yeah, at the end of the day, I don't find that they have terribly useful solutions. And if anything, I find they kind of perpetuate the problem. I mean, as Milo said, you don't fight identity politics with identity politics.
It's lost my train of thought. Repeat what you just said.
That they don't exactly have a terribly coherent message. They just exist to remind everyone of all the good stuff that white people did.
So solution. Sorry. They protest, but they don't go that extra step, and it's interesting. They're just sort of like a community, but they're not really a party. Yeah.
Yeah, they're basically just
they're a bit vague, aren't they?
They're very specific and yet very vague, because they have specific doctrines that they hold in common, such as race realism and white nationalism.
They unite on like some things, and that's where other people can sort of back them with that. But there's nothing really. Like they would never produce a party out of it, and if they did, it would just flop over.
Oh yeah, because there's no way to make racial separatism palatable to most people. There's no way to make race realism palatable to people,
And so I think, and that's a big part, because my faith influences my choice in politics, and there is a lot of aggression and segregation that sort of comes from them, and they might have some good reasons, but it's not good enough,
Exactly. So that being said, to tie up all the political stuff, what do you think the ultimate fate of the West is right now, where we stand? With mass Arab Muslim migration, the economic cultural destruction in Western Europe, the increasing of political violence in America, Europe, and maybe to an extent Australia. Do you think there's any way the West can save itself from the position it's in? Or do you think maybe you and me might see the rapture in our own lifetimes?
It's interesting debate. Would consider Europe and all the issues Germany has now.
Oh gosh.
The issues France has had for a while, and they're probably France got a little bit better, and it's probably gonna get sick again. And then this is the whole Poland versus the rest of Europe.
Dude, I hope Poland comes out on top, man. I loved Trump's speech there.
Currently, I'm still yet to look into that. But if we was to look at Europe, we're terrified, right? If our small conservative power receives more power before the next election in Australia, and we're allies with the US, I think there could be a great string of prevention there. There'd be a lot more support, and possibly we might be able to save ourselves. Otherwise, it's hard for me to do a whole general West thing. I think the general West thing, the biggest problem is probably gender stuff,
Yes.
and the gay stuff. Like that's probably the one thing that's happening about at the same speed as everyone else. The Islamic stuff, I think, is more open in us Commonwealth than it is in your country, because we're just piss weak, and I don't know why. Whereas there's a bit of a stronger force. It could be more in the US, but percentage-wise, you seem to be more careful about it, and especially because you've been involved in so much war and terror attacks and everything. And then in China, there's another issue with Australians. Like before the Arabs get here, that people are concerned Asia might take over first, because they're leasing large amounts of property in Australia. They're buying houses. Like we had a house up the road, and there was a Chinese flag hanging out the front, and we thought maybe they're celebrating Chinese New Year, and the neighbours, we got talking, and someone eventually found out that it was actually for sale, and the real estate put a Chinese flag in it because they were selling the house to Chinese people overseas because they would get better money for it. And so there's I have an issue with Asian people, but if it's like a communist Asian thing, I'm not looking forward to it.
No, thank you.
there are some towns in Australia where it's completely Chinese people. It's
really,
you have English signs, but you also have full-on Chinese signs. My brother does surveying, and he travels to do surveying.
They have Chinatowns in Australia?
Yeah, full on. And there's also full-on Indian towns. So I would say that Asians that are already living here are a threat. It's more the new ones with lots of money and everything like that.
To sort of further the corporatist and globalist agenda.
Yeah, it's very globalist. That's exactly, and that's probably what the West is looking at. You're looking at like the gender politics, and you're looking at globalism.
The threat of multiculturalism, which, by the way, Islam is exploiting the hell out of and destroying Europe with.
Yes, and a lot of the conservatives here are against the multiculturalism because
good.
And their work. I mean, because they come from parents who fought Muslims ages ago, or they fought, communists or fascists or Nazis ages ago, and there's a. But the thing with Australia is that we constantly have immigrants, and they come from all over the world. And a lot of people go to Australia because it's like their dream home sort of thing. It's like, oh, look at this wonderful place. And so I end up having a lot of airheads here because they don't want to face the negative stuff that happens in life. And so if we talk about the implications of a particular mentality or issues, wars we've had in the past, they go, don't talk about the bad stuff. And that as a result, they have now set us up for failure because there are people not learning about the bad things. Like, I know lots about all this bad stuff because my mum had a father who was at war and he saw all the bad things. They knew about all the bad stuff and they prevented it. But look at Europe, Poland, they kept telling the generations about all the bad stuff, so they're not getting affected, but everyone else went blasé about it, And you've got to talk about these things. And so I think, and that's where education comes into it, doesn't it? Because a lot of education now is actually not dependent on parents. I mean, there's still lots of parents that educate their kids, and rightfully they should.
Oh, dude,
especially, a lot of them just rely on the schools to give them, but then if you have schools that can't, I mean, school can only teach you so much anyway. If they are only covering, so many things, or if they have people who don't want to talk about the bad stuff, they aren't going to learn. And all of a sudden they're open, they're accepting, they're tolerant, they're inclusive, and all of a sudden they wonder why they're getting shot in the head at an Ariana Grande concert.
Yeah, exactly. It's man, the West needs to uncuck itself, seriously. I think America's salvageable, at least mostly. Europe is country by country basis. I mean, it seems like the Germans don't know how to not oppress people. Just saying. I don't know.
I think with a lot of countries, I mean, it comes down to who they vote for. You know, like in Australia, like you might have a leader who's, you know, says he's conservative, but then he says he's not conservative, and you go, but conservatives voted for you. You know, there's always that problem you have with countries where you might have a leader, but the country is not the same as the leader. And so, you know, unfortunately, all these people in Hamburg or wherever suffering all these attacks and whatever, but they did not ask for it. You know, there are brains there, but it's their government setting them up for failure.
Well, let's hope this new wave of populism sweeping Europe is enough to save it. I think America's salvageable, but I don't know, man. It seems like anything that's not Eastern Europe, with the exception of the UK. I mean, the UK seems to be doing better, but anything that's not the UK, anything that's not the UK.
There's a whole part within London that's for Muslims only, and like if you walk through the town, you'll get attacked.
Oh no, I know it's terrible. I'm just saying that I think the UK can save itself. I don't know if it will.
Yeah, especially since with removing themselves from the union.
Yes, it is good on them if they did that. Well, now to smoothen things out. I don't know. Let's talk briefly non-political stuff. I don't know. What are your favorite movies, music, shows? You know, YouTube stuff and whatnot.
I'm addicted to British comedy, but not the cheap stuff. I like good witty comedy, whether it's like Blackadder or IT Crowd. Or I like watching. There's a few panel shows out of Britain. Where they have comedians come on and they discuss a lot of things. There's one called Mock the Week, and it's mainly about politics. It's pretty good. Like they have left and right people on there, but it's just all with good humor. But I love that there's they're not produced by the BBC, because the BBC likes to you know put the reins on it. They're produced from other companies, or they're partially BBC, but also something else, I don't know, whatever, but they're good. Like they're offensive humor, and it's really good. I haven't watched any lately because I've been doing other stuff, but I'm really into British humor. I like adventure movies. Favorite movies, I like Pirates of the Caribbean. I like the Lego movies, so I have like that side of me, but also like things like Tropic Thunder and Death at a Funeral. I have a bit of a darker sense of humor, but no, that's what I'm into. I like rock music. I might surprise a few people. I'm really into some really rough things.
I have very weird taste in entertainment, honestly. Like I don't like a lot of mainstream stuff. I mean, I'm into Star Trek, you know, I'm into like modern kids cartoons like Gravity Falls, Phineas and Ferb, you know, My Little Pony. Yes, it's actually good. I'd say try watching it.
I just not pleased.
I meant the newest incarnation, but
yes.
To each his own. My musical tastes are classical.
Don't worry. I like listening to the Wiggles.
I remember when I used to
I'm into kids' education, and so there's bits of it that I actually find quite entertaining. It's like I actually quite like the music element of the Wiggles music, like it's good music. But then I'm also like, you can do this with like a group of kids sort of thing. And that's sort of how it entertains me like that.
I used to be a big fan of the show, dude. I liked that show all the way until like the early years of high school.
No. Yeah. I'm very much into a lot of rock music. I'm not really against mainstream. I don't care if it's mainstream as long as it sounds good. But everyone has their own tastes and whatever.
Yeah, my tastes are all over the place.
You sound like a standard geek.
Yeah, pretty much. I listen to music without words, so it always has to be classical. It always has to be video games. It always has to be orchestral.
What about electronic music?
Like what?
Electronic music.
I have a few techno songs that like my dad gave me, but I'm I guess you could say I'm not an aficionado of any one genre, so I'm no expert on anything. I just have very oddly specific tastes. I mean, I have a handful of rock songs, a handful of a few country songs, a few pop songs, a few oldies like 40s. It's all over the place.
Jolene, 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 Jolene.
I don't know. Do you drink? Do you have any favorite drinks? If so,
I didn't drink. I like a good citrus cocktail.
Mm.
Other than that, I like cranberry juice.
I'm a relatively new drinker, being only 23, but I'd have to say.
Yeah, well, you can drink at 18 here.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Huh. Well, the
We're in
U.S. is.
Australia.
I guess.
I don't like beer. I try beer. I try my best to like beer, but I cannot like beer.
You ever tried your share of dark beers?
Do you mean beers that are literally dark?
Yeah, like chocolate stouts, oatmeal stouts.
I don't know about stouts, but I've tried Guinness Draft.
Those are severely overrated. They're okay.
It's sort of it's not pleasant.
Try like an oatmeal stout or like a chocolate stout or something. Like stouts, like try stouts. Those will probably be what get you.
Is that what got you?
Well, no. Originally, I had to do light beer to get myself used to the flavor of beer, and then from there I
forced yourself into it.
Yeah, like I worked myself into it, and now I even like IPAs, which are like insanely bitter, but I enjoy.
And because of the patriarchy, you have to like beer.
Yes, because of the patriarchy. I mean, because of my.
You're not a real man otherwise.
Yeah, because of my masculinity, oh so fragile. I must enjoy beer. But I enjoy fruity cocktails. Like margaritas have to be my weakness. Honestly,
I don't like tequila. I hate tequila.
Oh, really?
But I love gin.
I haven't had much gin, so I wouldn't know. If it's hard liquors, for me. It's got to be whiskey and tequila are like my favorites. I have to say that like vodka is like like by itself I hate it, but I love the cocktails that you can make from it.
Sure.
You said you like citrusy cocktails. Like, do you like like simple stuff like screwdrivers, which are literally just orange juice and vodka?
Yeah, I can. I'm a bit. I make like a variation of LA iced tea, and I make the same variation because I just use club soda, but I prefer lemonade. But it's got it's crazy. It's got Midori, vodka, gin, triple sec, and is there something else?
You're talking about Long Island iced tea, right?
It said LA iced tea. I think Long Island's different again, but it's got like several liqueurs in it. Plus,
it's a very boozy cocktail.
Yeah, and I make a variation of that. It's like, and you have a whole glass of it. I take like over an hour to finish it.
Oh, beautiful.
But it's so sweet, and I actually give Mum a taste. She's like, it tastes like candy water.
No shame in liking sweet drinks. You can still be a man and like sweet drinks.
Have you seen that video, manly drinks versus girly drinks?
No, I haven't.
YouTube, it's funny.
Oh gosh,
that guy's got a good channel.
I need to look those up.
I'll just spam you with all these YouTube links, shall I?
That's fine. I'm sure I'll shill for YouTube channels myself. So lastly, are there any really profound books that you've read that you can recommend to me? Like give me your two biggest titles, whether they're novels, philosophy, theology. What are two really big books that you'd recommend me or anyone else to read?
There's a book that I actually haven't finished reading because I was reading it at my university's library, but I'm not at university now, so I haven't finished it. I probably should buy it, but I've skimmed like over the last bit, but I've read halfway more than half of it. It's a psychotherapy book, but the guy who's writing it, it's sort of weird. It was in the miscellaneous section of the library, because it is psychology, but it's not your average textbook. It's in chapters, but it's really interesting constructed. You may have heard of it. It's called the Path Less Traveled, or the Road Less Traveled by M. Scott Peck. And he's a psychotherapist, or was. I'm not sure if he's still alive. There's a few editions of this book, but it's a book about people, and it's about relationships, and it's about his experiences and like the things he's learned from counseling people and stuff. But the guy himself was becoming Christian at the time of his major part of his career, and he actually has it's subtly got Christian things in it. So even though he talks about counseling people, and it's, you know, if you're a nerd for psychology, you probably like it. But if you're not a Christian, you'll probably hate it, because he talks about grace and he talks about love, but it's really good, because if you want to learn about relationships and if you ever have to work with people, it's a really good reference book. There's lots to read though, but he's a very good writer, but it's really easy to read. But he includes lots in it. It's slightly philosophical, but it's mainly practical knowledge, and then he explains the different relationships and different types of love and you know, different illnesses, and it's really informative. Because I read a section of it in high school. It was given to me from a teacher for assignment, and I'm like, this is really interesting, and I should actually read the proper book one time. And so it's very good. It'll make you reflect on life for sure. And then I don't really have a second book, but considering I'm Lutheran, I should probably say you should read The Large Catechism written by Martin Luther. Whether you want to become a Lutheran or not, it's a good, because it's one of the major books from the Reformation. He's got essays about basic Christian stuff. He talks about some humanitarian things. He talks about the importance of sort of the creeds and uniting back to like the original Christian faith. So that's I probably have to shout that one. If you want to go full on Lutheran, you go to the Book of Concord, but I'll just say the Large Catechism. It's interesting, even if you're just studying history. It's it's because there's lots of misconceptions about Martin Luther, and you'll learn just how compassionate he was when he started it, and that's all there. So they're probably my two books.
Alrighty, so The Last Catechism by Martin Luther and The
Large Catechism, because there's a small catechism.
Sorry, it was the mic. I didn't quite hear it right. And no, it was not the accent. All right, it was not the accent. So don't go. Let's
hope the listeners don't struggle with my accent.
Oh, I don't think it's that thick. Well, anyway, thank you very much, Georgie. Thank you very much for joining me for this barely second episode of the podcast. And again, audience, I know this went on kind of long. This was about 2 hours, but I'll figure out some way to make these hour and a half to an hour. So Georgie, thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you, Peter. It was nice to talk.
Thank you very much.